All right. Today, we are knowing and claiming I am a center of divine intelligence. And we just sang, I am the center of divine attraction. And one of the reasons that's true is because we are a center of divine intelligence. If the infinite, the mystery, the thing that some of us call God, maybe that, whatever that is really omnipresent, well, if that's true, then we believe it's omnipresent in its entirety everywhere. All of it is everywhere. That means all of it is in your chair, and in the chair next to you, and in the ceiling, and the floor, and my little clicker remote thing here. That presence is not limited in size or scope or time or space, so that all of it is available where we are. And that means that the answers that we're seeking are available to us. They might come right from within us, or we might be directed to them somehow through people or places or circumstances, things that are helpful and lift us up. Everybody's experienced this, yes? Okay. So this is a tale of help that came from an unexpected source. A man went to a psychiatrist for advice. And he told the doctor, when I go to bed, I feel like there's someone under the bed. But if I get under the bed, I feel like there's someone above me on the bed. And the psychiatrist said, if you visit me once a week for 2 years, you'll be cured. And the man said, 2 years, how much is a visit? And the psychiatrist said, $150 an hour. The man said, okay, I'll think about it. But he never came back. And several months went by, and they ran into each other on the street. And the psychiatrist stopped him and said, why didn't you ever come back to me for help? And he said, well, doc, you told me it would cost me $150 an hour for 2 years to cure me. My bartender cured me in one night, and it only cost me $120. How did he do that? Asked the psychiatrist. He told me to cut the legs off the bed. Sometimes help comes from unexpected places, and it can be common sense or something that solves our problem in the immediate moment that we need it. And who knows but what that wasn't just the perfect solution for him. So we are a center of divine intelligence, and that means that we have the option of being a magnetic attractor. And you know, if you ever had clothing that came out of the dryer with too much static in them and all your socks and stuff stuck all over it, you know, that's what we can be like sometimes. And what sticks on us is generally what we're most familiar with and what we believe. And it shows up and it just hones in on us, smacko, there it is. And whether you wanted it or not is not the issue. So, you know, what we attract is what we are like. And there's always room for more to stick on to us. The truth is, we don't attract what we want, we attract what we are. So we resonate a certain vibrance, and what that is attracts more of what's like that to us, whether we intended it or not. And it grows out of this sort of subconscious belief system we have, individually, but also collectively. So as a family, we have particular beliefs. As a country, we have particular beliefs. And then we have our own experience of being in the world, and we develop a history that we base certain beliefs on. So it might be experiences or things that people told us, or things we decided about ourselves in comparison to other people, or things we decided about the world and what we could expect of the world or not. And those are the things that tend to show up then, the things that match those filters, right? Hello? Am I by myself up here? Yes, yes. Is Robert Harry here? You didn't answer my rhetorical question, honey. Yes, there we go. So, because we have this infinite intelligence within us, and that's true even when we think we're pretty dumb, that's still true. There is a natural, inborn inheritance that we have out of the infinite that can draw to us exactly what we need. And it doesn't matter what our IQ is. So we attract what we are. And so the invitation from the infinite then is that we become what we want. If I want to be a prosperous person, then I begin to think of myself in that way. I begin to allow myself into places and environments where I experience more opulence and beauty. Now, initially, that's going to make me feel out of place and uncomfortable, like I don't belong there. And that's the clue that it's working. Because when we stay inside of our comfort zone, we don't invite anything we don't already have and experience. So, in order to experience anything new, anything more that we want, we have to step outside of the familiar. Because if we already knew how to do that and what it would already be there in our experience, or we would already be there in that place. So as we step out of our comfort zone, we put out a different vibration. And in that different vibration, we allow ourselves into new situations and encounter new people and new ideas. There is, I think, a deep hunger in all of us that's native to being a human being. And that deep hunger is for something that we sense is good and whole and connected and real. And we may have given up hope that that's available or true, but the yearning for that exists in us even when we've tamped it down and put it to sleep. And so the power of having our connection to the infinite vision of our life supersedes the passing conditions and situations that we find ourselves in. And so what I mean by that is, it's one thing to visualize the future that you want and to imagine yourself in it and to become more a vibrational match for that, more of a resonant flow or tide with that experience that we want to have. That's one piece of it. The other piece of it is another spiritual practice that we teach called visioning, which is not about putting out what I want and creating the vibrational match for it. It's inviting Spirit's vision to come in, to be welcome in me, to open up to it, and for it to lift me into that new vibration. So both those things work. I can be a center of divine attraction. I can also allow the divine attraction that is to lift me into it. So in a sense, I am asking for and attracting that, and it is reaching out and filling me up. Now that's all metaphor, because the truth is there's nowhere to go and nothing to get to, because we were created whole, complete, and perfect. And that's really the truth of us, no matter what we've done or who we are or what we've experienced. But we lose track of that. At least I do. Anybody else have that problem? We lose track of it. Thank you, Robert Harry. Good to know you're here and awake. We lose track of it in our lives. It's easy to get distracted or discouraged or forget about it. But the good news is it's always possible to reconnect to it, because it doesn't die, it doesn't get diminished, it doesn't go anywhere. It's always true. And one of the clues for that is to bless and appreciate what we have as it is right now. Because when we bless and appreciate what is, we create an atmosphere of good stewardship, of caring about what has been divinely distributed to us, however much or little it is, being good stewards of it, not wasteful, not disrespectful, but appreciative of what is. Because when we are, that opens up the way to the increase that wants to come. So we bless, we tend, we appreciate, and what we appreciate appreciates. It increases with our gratitude, with our generosity, with our praising and blessing. And the blessing itself becomes an experience that's fulfilling. Being aware of and grateful for the people that are in our lives, the things that are in our lives, many or few, opulent or simple, doesn't matter. Whatever transportation we have, whether it's feet or Learjets, whatever we have to eat, whether it's very simple or very abundant, bringing gratitude for what is right now, taking a moment not to compare it to something else, but to appreciate it exactly as it is. Look around the room. This is our spiritual community this morning. This is a representation of it because not everyone connected with us is ever here on one Sunday. But these people who are here, they are magnificent. They are important. They are blessings. There's not a person in this seat, in any one of these seats this morning, that you personally did not need in this atmosphere today to make it exactly what it needs to be for you. That's true for me. It's true for every one of us. There's nobody missing from the group that we called forth to this place this morning because we are a match for whatever it is that's going on here. And this morning you'll also see that we have food on the table down here. This is the beginning of our 300 pounds of food that we're collecting for the Marin Food Bank. And every Sunday between now and December 10th, I'm inviting you to bring non-perishable, packaged, unexpired, not in glass food, and beans and peanut butter and stuff like that are appreciated because of the protein content. And we will bless these in the morning, and then you'll take them out and put them in the barrels that are out in the lobby. And those barrels are here all week, so you could always pop in and drop something in over the course of the week, or invite your friends to do that as well. Because what we're doing is we are blessing what we have and sending it forward and blessing the increase as that person experiences it, that it's given to, and also as it reflects back to us, because what we put out does reflect back to us always in some manner in our lives. So the one piece that's magical is that appreciation of what is. And then there's another piece that can be even harder, and that is letting go of what is finished. What has either never belonged to us, but somebody else gave it to us and we've been carrying it around, or something we took on that we really didn't need to, it wasn't our work, or something that no longer serves us. It may have at one time, but it doesn't anymore. Those things, in order for us to take flight, those things need to go, because they're using up energy and bandwidth that we need for what we want to expand into and for what it's time for us to expand into now. So we begin to bless and release. So we bless what is, we are good stewards of it, and we bless and let go of what no longer serves. Sometimes that's difficult and painful. Sometimes it's people. Sometimes it's habits. Sometimes it's places. Sometimes it's stuff. It's things. Sometimes it's our own idea of who we are. You know, one thing that we have to do in life is let go of what we used to look like, or the hope of what we never looked like but thought maybe someday we would. I remember a guy in Huntington Beach saying to me once, well, you know, there are limits to science of mind. I mean, theoretically, you can pray for anything, but I'd like to have hair again and be a little taller, and I don't expect that to happen anytime in the future. Well, you know, he might be right about that, and yet, who knows? But blessing what is allows us to open to a greater delight in and acceptance of what wants to come in, what wants to bless us, what wants to be there. And it's amazing what can be there when we're open to that, when we're willing to invite it. Ernest Holmes says in Living Without Fear, Ernest Holmes is the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living, there is an inner urge in our own minds to grow, to expand, to break down the barriers of previous limitations and to ever widen our experience. This persistent urge is a divine influence and irresistible force, and constitutes the greatest impulse in human experience, mostly misinterpreted and misunderstood, and often pursuing devious pathways. It is still the urge back of all accomplishment and the promise of all fulfillment. And in this thing called life, he says, in a sense, we subject our finite problems to the infinite intelligence, which automatically solves them through our recognition and acceptance that they are being solved. I love that. Thomas Edison said, I know this world is ruled by infinite intelligence. Everything that surrounds us, everything that exists, proves that there are infinite laws behind it. There can be no denying this fact. It is mathematical in its precision. And Nikola Tesla, who was a brilliant metaphysician and scientist in his own right, said these things, which I find kind of mind-blowing for a scientist of that time to say. So Nikola Tesla said, my brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. I have not penetrated into the secrets of this core, but I know that it exists. Can anyone doubt today that all the millions of individuals and all the innumerable types and characters constitute an entity, a unit? Though free to think and act, we are held together like the stars in the firmament with ties inseparable. These ties cannot be seen, but we can feel them. All perceptible matter comes from a primary substance filling all space, which is acted upon by the life-giving creative force, calling into existence in never-ending cycles all things and phenomena. Now that sounds exactly like Ernest Holmes to me, but that's Nikola Tesla. Amazing man. What wants to come in? What qualities in life want to be discovered, want to be expressed in us? What magic wants us to allow it to be expressed through us? Is this in the tree trunk a deformity? Or is it a blessing? Or is it a message, an encouragement? It is the remnant, I think, of a wound where there was a limb that somehow was removed, and yet what remains is a universal symbol of love and wholeness and healing. I want to share a story with you. This is a true story. It was written by Barbara Kingsolver, and it's not one of her novels. This is a true experience. Red is my color, I used to say, just because I liked it best. I owned it. How many other things have I claimed as mine so easily? Whistling and sunshine, life and liberty. Things that can be lost. Getting older means the breaks will come harder. I know this. I'm a professional observer reporting on that inevitable human progress, the endless hungers for more, the having less. I see how age and loss can bring a temptation to hold harder to the privileges that remain. The customs of hoarding happiness infect every culture as the powerful ways to bar the weak or the young. I want to believe the cycle can be broken. I want to get old and give things away. Red is my color, I used to say, and never will again, because of a beautiful spirited girl named Manuka Pudel. We met in a village in lowland Nepal where red was everywhere, in flowering hedges, women's saris, and the tika powder that dusts their hair and dots their foreheads as a symbol of marriage. I was there on a ceremonial day, so poinsettias in jars lined the dusty road, blazing against the mud brick houses. I wore a red bandana against the fierce lowland sun. I'd come as a journalist, investigating women's development projects. This trip marked my 25th anniversary as a professional writer, and I felt shadowed by the girl I used to be. The one who took up her pen, believing that people would behave humanely if only they knew the whole story. Since then, I've crossed continents for those stories, breaking bones along the way, wearing out youthful hopes, and most of my trust in happy outcomes. My current assignment felt likely to restore my optimism or put nails in its coffin. I'd been told that in this nation, racked by a decade of armed insurrection, this is Nepal, one international development agency had kept working where others could not. Its programs had improved the lives of more than 20,000 families. Even in the best of times, human kindness is fragile. How could it weather 10 years of war? If Manuka had the answer, I was listening. As we waited for the day's ceremony to begin, she chatted eagerly, establishing that we both had the same favorite color. We both have young daughters. She had married at 16 and moved in with her husband's family. I imagined my husband and I would be the two wheels of a cart, she said. But 5 years later, when she was pregnant with their third child, her husband died. My mother-in-law made me wash the tika from my hair and told me that as a widow, I could never wear red again, no bright colors. Widows here don't remarry. A husband's death is the next thing to it for the wife. Her community sees her as bad luck. Drab clothing broadcasts her shame. For widows like Manuka, it also broadcasts vulnerability and the risk of sexual assault. Nevertheless, at 21, she adjusted to a lifetime without color. My life was ended. I know no other way to be alive than to keep listening, even to stories that are as sad as this. But should I stop hoping that somewhere the story will be different? The people of Manuka's village are seasonal agricultural workers joined by the common ground of poverty. They have no doors that lock, hardly a possession beyond the handfuls of rice stirred into each day's meal. And still, they could find a way to divide themselves into haves and have-nots. Married women ostracized widows. High caste families still spurned those of lower caste. Before meeting Manuka, I'd talked with an elderly widow named Dana Bisho Karma, an untouchable. She never let her shadow fall on anyone. In shops, she paid by tossing rupees without touching the owner's hands. I had touched the old woman's arm as I listened, wishing to prove the system that binds her is non-existent where I come from. But I know better. I started school in a racially segregated first grade. In my country, our poorest youth disproportionately inhabit our prisons and our wars. School children scramble for classroom supplies while luxury accumulates around corporate heads. If we had no other currency for privilege, I'm sure that we too would make rules about shadows and hoard color. During the long drive to this village, I discussed my doubts with a Nepali staff member from Heifer International, the development organization that had worked here through roadblocks and revolution. Its mission is to train communities to become self-reliant through raising livestock or other means. Yes, she agreed. Bridging that gap between rich and poor is complex. Material support alone, simply having more, is not the answer. It won't really change the situation unless people have changed themselves, she said. I value Heifer for addressing mental poverty. Mostly, that comes from the women coming together in meetings, working on goals. But how does mental poverty end when new entitlements seem to create new needs? 2 nights earlier in Kathmandu, I watched an American tourist complain scornfully about our hotel. Privilege begets privilege. That very morning, I had tied a red scarf on my head without a thought. Now my scalp burned as I listened to Manuka explaining how she'd lost that color forever. When Manuka's husband died, her bereft mother-in-law began attending meetings of the Milan Mahila Samuha, or Women's Togetherness Group. And with guidance from the Heifer development staff, they devised a livelihood improvement plan. They would raise meat goats. The first women to receive the animals pledged to pass some of their goats' offspring to other members, renewing the cycle until every villager had a source of income. This was the story that had intrigued me. How did Heifer outlast the storms of war? The trick was to create material assistance from inside a village itself, rather than from far away. I wanted to believe it could work, but I had to ask, would some cheat? Don't lower caste families get left out? I hated my skepticism, but that was the question I'd ask to Bisho Karma. I am the lowest of untouchables, she said. So of course I was afraid to go to a meeting at first. Where would I sit? But the women who helped organize us were very open-minded about untouchable people. They spoke right to me. And little by little, high caste women would share their feelings and even take food together with me. This was beyond my imagination. We had a long talk about spiritual values that stayed on my mind afterward. I thought, maybe that's why the others are nice to me. She'd been surprised to learn someone in the group would give her animals she could raise, earning the first income of her life. More surprising was the idea that she would eventually pass on that favor to another. I had given away some vegetables once, but never a big thing. This was new for me. It gave me new energy for living. Manuka's mother-in-law also found herself energized by the workshops, at first as they tangled sanitation and nutrition, then gender and caste. She decided Manuka should come to the meetings too. The discussions made us start thinking about how women treat other women, Manuka said. The fact that widows carry shame. It's women who make their daughters follow these rules. Her mother-in-law agreed. Talking about unspeakable things had caused her to think about what was hers to keep or to let go. Girls wear bright colors and bangles before they get married, she reasoned. So being happy is not just a privilege of marriage. My son is dead, but my daughter-in-law is not. Manuka was every inch alive as we sat waiting for the women's togetherness ceremony to begin. 14 women who'd earned income from their goats would now pass on the offspring to newer members. The donors wore red saris. The new initiates wore lavender. The whole village turned out. I felt hope rise and soon was crying like a child because Donna Bisho Karma, whose old untouchable hand I'd wanted to hold, was now standing, throwing her shadow over everyone, holding her gift, a lop-eared goat wearing a necklace of golden marigolds. She walked toward her chosen recipient, another poor widow belonging to the highest caste in the village. Last year, Bishakarma couldn't have entered the woman's home. Today, she gave her good fortune. In the embrace of the two old women holding each other, I saw the architecture of human grace. How astonishingly simple. Mental poverty ends this way. A person's status can change, not by receiving, but by giving. If life is a march toward owning more and having less, it can also walk backward in its tracks, creating riots of inexplicable compassion. Spinning straw into gold, it can change the rules and dance. Manuka now stood up with her mother-in-law. The other mothers came forward with a plate piled with red tika powder, the adornment forbidden to widows. And by the handful, they scooped up the color red, giving it back to this daughter, rubbing it into the crown of her head, covering her hair and face in a cloud of vermilion. She fell backward as the older women passed her from hand to hand, wrapping her in a red shawl. They had made a decision. Manuka should walk forward into her life wearing color. Tears streaked scarlet tracks down her powdered cheeks. Schoolgirls and mothers cried for her joy, which was also theirs. Now, Manuka thinks her mother-in-law should wear red too. Young people will change, she says, when the older ones do. As the crowd walked home, I took off my scarf and gave it to a girl who had been eyeing it. Red isn't mine, for what on earth can be owned that hasn't been given away? The poinsettias wilted, and the village looked ordinary again. But untouchables had been touched. A widow danced barefoot in a red shawl. Today, in this place on earth, there was enough. And so today, in this room, we are grateful for what is ours, however great or small it may be. We are grateful, we bless it, we are good stewards of it, we are generous with it, and we make way in ourselves to let go of smallness and to welcome what wants to come in. And one of the ways we're doing that is with these gifts that we are sending off to the Marin Food Bank. So this morning, we know that we are a center of divine intelligence. And so let's say that together. I want you to stand and say, I am a center of divine intelligence. All right, 1, 2, 3. I am a center of divine intelligence. One more time, let them hear it out on the street. I am a center of divine intelligence. And now we. We are a center of divine intelligence. Thank you, and so it is. Yes. Now this is a time that we need to anchor. So I invite you to close your eyes for a moment and to imagine that right where your heart is, there is a brilliant, glowing light. And it is so powerful that it expands to fill your entire being. And it is so bright that it expands beyond the confines of your body, like a halo aura surrounding you, in pearlescent, glowing white. And as it does this, the entire room fills with this light. And this is the light of wholeness, of abundance, of love, of safety, of unity and oneness, of creative joy and generous unfolding into more. We are so grateful to accept this beingness that we are and to pass it on, knowing that the more we share, the more we have and are in this great, universal, unlimited wholeness. We accept it for ourselves and for our loved ones, for those in this room and those beyond it, for those who need to know it the most right now, wherever they may be in the world. And we are grateful to know this truth for ourselves and for them. So we let it go. We give it forth. And so it is. Yes.